Good afternoon. Welcome to the February 20th Clark County Fire District 6 Board of Commissioners meeting. I'd like to call this afternoon meeting to order and ask the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I might ask if we can move one of the meetings.
Read approve, post as necessary, the minutes of our February 5th board meeting and workshop.
So move. Second.
Where credit is due, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Correspondence this afternoon, I didn't see anything added to that. Citizen communication, citizens viewing this afternoon's meeting communicate directly with the board chat feature that will be monitored throughout this afternoon's meeting. Moving on to committee reports, EMS District M, Chief Huber.
So actually, I'll take that one. We've been meeting with EMS District 2. We did go out for RFP as I reported to the board. We decided not to go that route. So right now we are in the process of meeting with the city manager as well as the mayor of Vancouver and seeing if we can't do a reset on the whole process and try to start from the beginning and perhaps piggyback on Vancouver's contract. So
I hopped on a little late. What happened to they were gonna go, their attorney, they were gonna redo bylaws and maybe get a political figure. And I know we talked about maybe something different.
yeah,
What did they do on that act?
so do you have a report on that one?
The county attorney kind of has an opinion that since the districts, and you're talking about for the additional board member?
Correct.
Yeah, that since the districts aren't really mentioned specifically, it's more of the cities that are mentioned, that'd be a conflict of interest to have anybody other than one of the city council members or the county council members. So personally, I don't know if I agree with that, but that's what their attorney has advised Sue, which later on in our workshop, she kind of broke that down and told us about that. And we had a little bit of discussion about it. They believe that they can, with the advisories of the chief and being involved, that we could still accomplish what we need to accomplish without having representation on their board. But I think this process of what we're going through to piggyback with Vancouver will tell us more, will give us more of an idea of how invested they are in it. And they seem to be really invested in it, and they're definitely listening to the chiefs. They're taking everything under advisory. So I don't know what else to do other than, to say, is that really, that's her opinion.
Right.
And that's the way she's looking at it.
Are they going to add additional?
They're still discussing that. They want to add one more position, but they're not really sure if they really need to, if it would be any beneficial. I don't think they have people banging on the door to be a part of that.
No.
I think that's part of the issue.
I would reluctant.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, and I think personally, I think it'd be good to have a district member, on there, or a fire chief on there. It'd be really good, but I can kind of see their point if we're not mentioned. It's really it's a goofy arrangement they have, and they're even trying to figure out that to solidify that agreement even better and mention the districts and improve that process. So I think they're kind of working on that, but the priority is to get an ambulance contract before our time runs out at the end of this year. We're going to be, we need something. So that's kind of the priority.
Thank you.
But
So obviously there's three of us. How did the other two feel about piggybacking on Vancouver again since Clark was transferred?
Well, as the current contract's written, for this year, Clark already has the ability to transport. So, what we discussed in our meetings is we're all willing to look at a piggyback situation as long as District 6 had the ability to transport in crisis situations or level 0 situations with the ability to either bill or recoup our cost. So that's what we're asking for. And if we can piggyback without those parameters changing too much of the contract where they have to go back out for RFP, that's what we'd like to do. part of what we recommended to the county was that there was no readiness fee at all,
Vancouver paid it.
not until we separate.
At the beginning of
But we don't-
25,
We don't believe so.
that's the key, because right now, if they're going sole on themselves, they have to create, if AMR has another contract separate with EMS District 2, then they got to duplicate those administration fees, all those other fees, and that's what that 1.5 came into play. If they don't have to do that, there more than likely won't be any subsidies at all, or whatever fees we're calling it. So I think personally, politically, there's political action being taken between the county and Vancouver speaking, and then there's a battleground. I think we're okay to say this is a battleground. City manager and the city manager of Vancouver are gonna meet, and then the fire chief are all gonna meet. I think we're gonna be able to work something out that will be good for 4 years. You know, of a contract that should not involve any subsidies. That's the goal.
Thank you. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you. Were there any other committee reports that didn't see this?
No.
Moving on to the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second. Right, we moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Chief's report.
So first is the January 2025 overtime summary report. When the board probably first took a look at that, the amount is staggering. So overtime for January is $261,813.67. That's about 100,000 over what we normally carry per month for overtime. There's a couple reasons for this overtime cost. One of them being we have 6 members on long-term injuries or disabilities right now that we're backfilling for while we're waiting to bring on new people. Other things are we had a significant testing process, which cost us a chunk in overtime. And then we have a bunch of truck training going on right now for the tiller truck. So those are some of the things. This was discussed in staff. We're all well aware that this is above what we normally spend, and we're looking at how we can modify some of this.
What was so expensive?
We do a testing process here at District 6 that's a little bit different than other agencies do, where we have the firefighters do kind of a, if I were to equate it to something, let's call it speed dating, where they bring in a number of candidates, do a whole assessment process, and they bring their top candidates to the fire chief. So all that is done on an overtime basis. With the addition of a HR position, we're considering that will alleviate much of that overtime next testing processes. But that's how we get the good candidates that we get. So budget performance for January, we anticipate that we expend 8.3% of our budget. For fire, we've expended 7.1, and for EMS, 8.9. Just keep in mind that in January, we always double pay our insurance. So it's a double month insurance. That's why we run a little high in January. So facilities update report, work is progressing on Station 61. We now have a substantial completion date of June 16th. That's pushed back further than we'd like. We've extended our lease with our temporary office until the end of June. Fire barrier is an expensive change order to get that all alleviated and up to county code requirements. The change order for that is $192,500. That will be part of a submittal. And then we also have some other stuff that we have in a change order having to do with that same GL5 line that we're calling, which is that whole area of dampers and firewall. And that's estimated to be an additional $46,960. We've had some success with the ATS switch. So if the board remembers, last month, we were told that the ATS switch was getting pushed back to mid-July. When we heard that news, we went to the people that build these switches, told them that was unacceptable. We got that date moved back to May. So it does have a ship date of May 30th. They won't guarantee that ship date, but they understand the pressure that they need to get it done on time. We also have met with the county, and they've agreed to give us temporary occupancy without that switch being in place. So even if the switch is delayed, we could still get occupancy when the building project's finished. Good point.
Since you're on there. Is there any way at this point to estimate how many more change orders? Easily. I know it's impossible to say. We weren't expecting this one because they reviewed the plans, they approved them, that, there we go. Now we got nailed, it just makes me a little nervous because we're
Mhm.
in overtime.
Well, with the changes is the GL5 issues, so the firewall issues, they're starting to sheetrock and close everything up. So the chances of there being many more significant change orders with the structure of building, I would say are low. That being said, there could always be change orders. But as long as they start buttoning everything up, we should be hitting the finishing phases of the project, I would hope. Unless you have something more to add.
No, yeah, there's some, the elevator is gonna be a big piece, but there's not, that shaft is already taken care of. That was a part of the GL line that we were dealing with, so I agree that I don't think that we should anticipate any large change orders coming at all.
And then within the next week, Chief Newberry is supposed to have to me an estimate of what he thinks the building project will cost to finish, so we'll have a good estimate on that.
Still waiting to get.
They should already be down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, they're down,
Yeah.
yeah, go over and take a look, they look really good, yeah, cleared out an area for the shop, it looks nice. Yep,
We got the fire.
It was surplus.
yeah. But
And then finally, I just wanted to keep the board appraised that we have been meeting with McKinsey. We met with them before the first of the year. We have voiced our frustration and disappointment with McKinsey because many of these change orders are design flaws or things that were overlooked in the design process, and we feel that they are caused by McKinsey. So we're in the process of working to assign those to McKinsey and try to get some kind of reimbursement to the district for some of those change orders. Correct.
Has there been any response from McKinsey related to the change orders?
They are amenable to some refund, but not to where we feel that it should be. So we're tracking our last big change orders and we'll meet with them again and see where we land. Yeah. But they haven't closed the conversation.
On the whole business, policy 214, with contracts.
So this was read for a first reading with the board at their last meeting. This is a policy to how we secure public contracts and procurement. It also raises the chief's buying threshold significantly to the $75,000 range. This was drafted by Brian Snur and is in line with what other fire service agencies are doing. The reason why that threshold is set so high is because that's the point where we start having to look at public bid issues. So if the board had no comments about the policy, it would take a motion of the board to approve or send back to staff.
I'll make a motion to.
Second. Motion's been moved, made and seconded to approve policy 214. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
For those of us who actually-
No problem.
Moving on to the business. Fire chief updates.
So in the 2025 goals outlined for the fire chief, part of that was quarterly updates to the board on progress on our goals that were set forth by the board. I've scheduled those with board meetings to be 15 minutes prior to the board meeting quarterly. I just didn't know if that's how you guys want to move forward with it, or the other option you could do is start the quarterly goal progress report at 4 o'clock with the meeting to immediately follow.
Our meetings don't usually run that long. I would just include it as part of.
I'm fine either way.
So they cover everything.
Okay.
How long are your quarterly reports really gonna be?
Does that require a motion of the board? Is that a
No, I think it-
workshop or?
I don't think so. You can just include it in your chief's report, actually.
Okay. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Reorganization plan.
So this is gonna start a PowerPoint up here for you guys. I wish. Problem is I don't know why it's off to the side.
Is it, are you on split screen at all?
Yeah.
Actually, kind of. I can't see great.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's in your packet. We can talk about it. That might be easier. But we're looking at doing some organizational structure changes, and I'm gonna be meeting with the crews over the next couple weeks to go over these organizational structure changes, but I wanted to present them to the board first. So they're in your packet under number 9C presentation.
I got the org chart, that will.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first organizational structure change, we're doing this in two parts. Sorry, I was still trying to get this to go on while we're talking.
That's what I.
So the first part is,
It's in like 3 sections.
sorry about that. I don't know if somebody else wants to play with that. I'm sitting here. So if you look at the first organizational chart, that's the one labeled January 2025. You have the Board of Commissioners, Fire Chief, Office Administrator, Office Assistant, and then underneath me would be Chief of Staff. The Chief of Staff would then be in charge of the Assistant Chief Operations and Assistant Chief Administration. You will see that the third Assistant Chief position is in a dotted line box situation, and that's because we're phasing out that position. We're moving those job requirements into other positions, and eventually that position will be phased out. So then nothing more changes for the Assistant Chief of Operations other than he will get the office assistant of training underneath him. And then the Assistant Chief of Administration, who is currently Chief Schmidt, he will then take over the Public Information Office as well as facilities and volunteers. Fleet will still fall under the Chief of Staff. So that's our first section of reorg for the district. It should be a presentation. Is there a 9C presentation? It would be a PowerPoint.
Try mirror.
See if that helped.
Oh, see, it's the same thing. I think they're all the same.
Well, I'll explain to you the next part too. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. So we anticipate within about 2 years, the district will again go through a reorganizational structure. That structure will then be the fire chief with 2 assistant chiefs, one of those being the assistant chief of operations as well as the assistant chief of administration. At that point, we'll alleviate the chief of staff position and we'll start infilling some of the job duties required by operations and administration with civilian personnel. So you'll look in the future, we start adding a logistics assistant as well as a mechanic position to be able to.
See if you can add now.
Yeah.
Kathleen knew.
There you go.
Kathleen is doing some logistics right now, and then Julie is also doing some logistics. Oops, sorry.
Not bad for a PC guy.
Okay. So again, this is the 2025 organizational chart where we have the chief of staff with the 2 assistant chiefs full-time, 1 assistant chief phasing out. And then if you look at into the future, we'll have 2 assistant chiefs with a human resources administrator at the same level as them. We're adding a mechanic and we're adding a logistics assistant. So that would be the future, what we're building towards. We're trying to reduce some of the chief positions and fill those with civilian positions. And again, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but that's what we're looking at for a reorg, and it may help explain when we look into the budget forecast a little bit too, why we're looking at some of those changes.
I might have missed it. Was there a proposed timeline for this? Is this beyond 2026 or?
We anticipate this to be in full swing in 2027, but that's all dependent on when people choose to retire and that kind of stuff too. So no set date.
For the chief.
And we can turn off the mirroring now, or turn off the screen. Sorry, that was kind of clunky, but hopefully you get the idea of what we're looking at moving towards.
Questions, gentlemen, related to the proposed reorganization? Nope. Okay. Financial forecast.
So in your packet is a financial forecast that the board asked to be prepared at their last meeting. This is a financial forecast for 2026 to 2028. Some things that are assumed in this financial forecast are, well, first of all, we're concerned about the AV. If our AV doesn't increase, our levy rate doesn't increase, so we remain static essentially. So that means as our expenditures grow, no more new money comes in. And this is an issue that we've faced before. And I'm going to give you what's outlined as the worst case scenarios that we predict, but we have to look at those so we know how to plan for the future. But we used an estimate of a 1% increase in property tax revenue for 2026, a 2% increase in property tax revenue for 2027 and 2028. The assumptions we made with this financial forecast are a 4% salary increase. So the max in the CBA is 4%. The minimum is 3%. We did a 5% benefit cost increase. That's on average over the years what we normally see. We did a 3% increase in supplies and a 3% increase in services. We did transfer to 6258 and reduced it in 2026 to 400,000 annually. So you'll see some of those reductions. If you go to the first page of the budget forecast, you can see in the top chart for 6212, which is our fire suppression budget, the amount we bring in and the amount that is required for the ending fund balance. So if you look at the chart on the bottom, you can see that in 2024, we were fine for the required ending fund balance of 35%. You can see in 2025, we remain fine where we still carry over at least 35%. So our ending fund balance is anticipated to be 11,620,000 and some change, and our ending fund balance is 8.67. Where we start to get into not meeting our 35% threshold on the ending fund balance is in 2027. So 2026, we still maintain it. But then in 2027, we have started to dip into our carryover where we're not maintaining that 35% balance anymore. So if you look in 2027, our ending fund balance is anticipated to be 6.9 million. We're required by the 35% to carry over 9.1. And then in 2028, you'll see that our ending fund balance is 4.1 million. And so we won't have that 35% carryover. I'll just go on to EMS and then I'll explain some of the caveats within the system. So if you look at the same for the EMS budget, we're fine until 2026 where we have that 35% carryover. And then you see in 2027 and 2028, we start getting into some issues where we don't have that carryover anymore.
Is 6 years?
Yes.
So in 3
Yeah.
years, and 28 would be.
Yep. And again, this is if we only get a 1%, 2%, and 2% increase in AV. So if that changes, then things look more optimistic. If it doesn't change, this is where we are. So the reason why these projections are important to the board is, for one, they're important to staff because we can look at them and know how we need to start saving for the future and looking out for the future so we don't not meet that. Staff is dedicated to meeting that 35%. So we will look at our budget as we move throughout it to see what we can do to make those changes. This is also budgeting for every expense. We can't carry unfunded liability within the district. So comp time, vacation time, anything that could be cashed out is a liability to the district, and we have to budget for those as well. So there is some buffer in the budget, but worst case scenario, this is where we're sitting. Built within this are a change in chief administrative officers in 2027. We took 2 of those salaries out, so that change is in there. We added a salary in 2026 for a mechanic. This includes $1 million purchase for a fire engine this year and next year, or to be delivered next year. So some of those funds are already incorporated into this.
I think we hit it just right last year. I think we got 1%, it would be good, we got 2%, great.
Yeah.
But I think you almost have to go on the lower figure, make sure that we are gonna get ourselves. We finally passed the signature, and then we get it like high housing crisis. You know, the timing was terrible, but before it's over, I'm sure. we'll pick up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I appreciate that, as I was concerned, that I'm concerned about 2027, but if staff knows that we need to stay, that pink line needs to go down, the blue line needs to go up to keep us going. Keep that in the back, we just can't buy stuff willy-nilly, we just have to be careful. I know there's a lot of work. I appreciate it. It was good for us. Never want to lay anybody on.
Well, the fortunate thing is we've spent the last 5 years really building up to this position where we have District 6 functioning at a high level, and now we need to maintain that. So our growth period happened, we financed that, so now we're in the maintenance process. But the other good thing is this isn't deficit spending, so although we're not meeting the 35%, which is a huge deal because that 35% carries over, so we never have to borrow first quarter taxes, it's not putting us in the hole. So we may have to make some modifications, but we're still stable.
Well, it was a lot of work and I appreciate it. It's something we maybe each year we can. Each year at this time we can see where we are. I think the graph is.
Okay.
Fortunately, the public can't see their anybody's actually. They can get a copy of that.
Very helpful, thank you. Moving on, engine purchase.
So at the last meeting, it was discussed about purchasing an engine that's a Pierce off-the-line spec, not our traditional spec. Brad Osborne has done some more work on that. He got final pricing on it. We're debating on the tax rate on it, so the most that it would come in at is $900,998 and $998,073. $1 million, so it'd be just under $1 million. This is included in the budget. This is a line rig, and Brad's here to answer any questions that the board may have about the timing of this and why it's necessary.
So this is, like I said,
Yes,
is there in the caps, like where I'm looking at the
so
final fire budget?
62, it's not in the figures you look at right there, but it's anticipated to be purchased at 6258 at the capital reserve.
6258. Okay.
And that would be next year. We have to pay for it.
Next year.
we anticipated that we'd pay for it next year, but there is a decrease in the cost if we pay 400,000 this year and the rest of it next year. So,
The 6258, I'm looking, we budgeted for 24 to have 2.3 million in there. We actually have 3.8 million. So that's where that's where it's at.
so normally the board asks us to carry 1.2 million in 6258, so we have that in there. The additional cost is the truck that's being delivered, and then we're setting aside money for the 2 engines in 2028. So yes, it will come out of 6258.
It's not, because there's an apparatus reserve fund. which is
Oh, I'm
correct.
sorry.
That's 6257.
That's where the engines are coming out of.
That's where the $1 million is going, we're saving up for the 2 engine purchases in 2028. But the immediate engine purchase is coming out of 6258.
Okay.
Not for.
Gotcha. So this one we're talking about tonight, 6258.
Yes.
The 2 engines we're budgeting for, and I see that at 6257 in the 2025 budget, we basically go from 115,000 to 1.1 million.
Yep.
Okay.
That'll be $1 million a year each
Yeah.
year for the next 3
Okay.
years.
I don't want Brad to throw anything in. Of course, I'm concerned about money and having that extra $1 million sitting there for cost for the station. I know what's gonna happen in this district. I understand that it's better. I just have, it's not our spec. We've got 7 engines. And I know it's getting harder and harder for Brad to keep everything running, and that's why we're looking at it.
Mhm.
It seems like $1 million to buy an engine. Get us by the doesn't meet our spec. Seems like a lot of money.
Yeah.
I guess what I would ask is that take a look at mileage numbers. I mean, we have kind of a water plant, when they hit this point, they go to reserve, we need to buy more. Is that realistic this day and age? Can we spread that out a little bit? Will it last a few more years? The second mechanic, is that possible that we could make some of our reserve apparatus available to fill in if they need the two down the road? I mean, we get the truck, we're gonna be three in a truck. We have 7 pieces of apparatus, and I would assume every one of them is working order today, because that's your job, that's what you do, and I appreciate. I'm just saying, could we take a look at it? Because, you know, we're running the crap out of it. And, it puts a lot of miles on it to go there. Sometimes it makes sense.
Commissioner, one thing before Brad answers that is, one of the things that we're looking at is in 2027, we've guaranteed that we would put an engine at Station 151. So that's a 2-year rotation for us and Clark Cowlitz. They do an engine 2 years, we do an engine 2 years. So that's part of the push for this. We'll have another additional need in our fleet besides what we have now. But I want him to answer all your other questions.
It'd be reasonable to. Well, maybe I'm not having the same.
We are.
I think that was the older rigs would be.
So
But I'm gonna support it.
everything we currently have, other than our last 2 new bumpers, need to be reserved. Like even our velocities, they're at the mark to where they need to be in reserve status. And I think to extend the life of our reserves, buying this pumper and getting the truck is crucial to extend that. If we weren't getting the truck, we would actually need 2 pumpers. So, getting the truck is helping that out. We currently have three reserves. Cadets have a vehicle. We want to give training a vehicle, because they're hard on it. And then that will give us 2 reserves, and then we will need to put like she said, put a engine up at 151 for 2 years. So once that's all said and done, we would be to 1 reserve, if we do not get this pumper.
I guess, get back to my question. What mileage do we say the reserve and what's hours and mileage? What's the decision to move a 4-year-old rig to reserve?
10,000 hours, 100,000 miles.
Okay, and not the 2 we bought, the 2 before, have over 100,000 miles on them.
Yep.
Wow.
Which they're 2016s.
Yeah.
Yes, they had. So, and just with the call volume, you see the numbers, but from the time I came here almost 4 years ago, we've lost a month and a half, almost 2 months on an oil change. So they were going almost 4 months, and we're just barely getting 2 months out of the oil changes now, because the call volumes have picked up so much, and they're running that much more.
Brett, can you elaborate on the spec difference between this?
So, yeah, so the spec difference, it's a Sabre versus a Enforcer. The main, it's exactly the same cab. Looking at the pumper, you won't even be able to tell the difference as far as cab. Same cab, it either goes to Florida to be a Sabre, or it goes to Wisconsin to be an Enforcer. Main mechanical function that we're going to be missing is command zone. So Sabre is a hardwired, what they call a hardwired truck. So basically you're going to lose things like, if you have an open door alarm, instead of looking at your command zone and being, say it's this door, now we're going to have to go around, and check which door it is. Kind of luxuries. The hose bed covers, it will have a canvas tarp versus aluminum folds. So those are the kind of features. But we sat down, Chief Hebert, Russell, and the apparatus crew this week with the salesman, and I think we have it pretty close operationally to exactly what we have now. I mean, you can speak to that, but
Here, I was actually quite surprised at how close we could get it to our current spec of enforcers. But so these ones it is an Enforcer cab. They build these cabs and they send the Sabres to Florida to build, and they send Enforcers to Wisconsin to build. The Wisconsin plant does the fully custom, where it's, everything is to custom order, whereas the Sabre orders, you can change like 15 things on the rig. And it can only do so much, so we lose like a transverse compartment that we have on our enforcement, we lose that, so we'll find different areas for storage of certain items. But largely, if you look at the two side by side, you'll be surprised to see that they look very similar.
Same cab, same body, same ladder rack. The hose bed I think was 4 inches taller, but it's gonna be longer. So yes, very, very, very similar. A few of the things, we was able to take a few things off to add things. So, like the little corner whip lights, that you guys have and that for directional, like I could put those on when it comes. Because that was an option we could remove to add something that was important.
So the car feelers?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Sarah, did you have anything with that? Sarah's the head of our engine spec.
Like you said, I was very surprised with how close we could get it, and I think it's gonna be exactly what we need. And the things that we dropped off to make it as close as we can are things that I don't think we're gonna miss. We took out like extra foot pedal for the officer side on the siren so that we could put something back in. They're gonna be very, very close, and I think it's gonna work really well for us.
You captain's okay with losing that foot
Drive-
pedal?
I don't know.
I wasn't, but I lost
Bigger, bigger large tank.
Yeah, we literally, with our group, we went out and stood by this one, and our salesman had our current spec. And then the spec that we're working with, and he's like, and he would read one line item and say, you can get it or you can't. And we went through the whole build sheet that way. And so, everything we could get to match them is matching.
Thank you.
And when would we expect that if you were to purchase this engine with the two already in line for 2028, when's the next window of time you would forecast a need for an engine replacement?
Probably should order them now.
That's what I mean.
Right.
That's what I mean. When is this gonna come back?
Well, we've talked about that a little bit, but I would think at least, I need to look at the amount of time that we've had our new pumpers, because that's the best rate of the way we're moving forward. And see in the amount of time we've had them, how many miles and hours. But I would say after we got the two in 2028, we would be wanting to order 2 more to keep the cycle going. So we're not back in this, I mean, the best thing would be is if Pierce started building them faster. To where you're back. And well, I don't think it's ever gonna be cheaper. So, but if they can build them faster, then, this 2-year to a 4-year time is what's really got us in a pickle.
Our previous replacement plan was built off of like a 10 and 10, 10-year frontline, 10-year reserve. And I think we're kind of more in a like 7 and 10 kind of status.
And
And
this,
even with that, our 3 reserves, they are actually slated to be surplus next year. But, they're good enough, we will not surplus them. Like, we'll keep running them and use them where we
We don't
can.
get anything for them, but to run until they fall apart.
Right.
I agree.
How much we got for our last year?
yeah,
District
10,
District 3 pump?
District 10, District 10 bought it for 10.
He said where it's warm, where you need shorts, that's all he told us.
Well, yeah, so do you need a team to go back and? Who wants to go to Apple?
Yeah, really.
But all of this will be evaluated in the strategic plan too. So, and we'll update that apparatus plan as part of that.
With all that said, since I was kind of amazed, appreciate all the additional comments, I'll make a motion to go with it.
I will second that. Right, motion been made and seconded for a engine purchase as outlined, Saturday's packet. All those in favor? Aye. Yeah, right.
So could you do,
900-99807.
could you do not to exceed $1 million, just till we get that tax question clarified?
Sure, not to exceed 1.1 million.
I'm good with that. Motion
Thank you.
made and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Way to bum rush us with information. Yeah, nice work.
And if the board would like, it'd be nice for Brad to give an update on some of the vehicles that we've surplused and what he's gotten for those, as well as an update on the truck and squad.
So we've sold 2 of the, I think they're 2006 Expeditions.
They blue booked for 4,000 to 6,000. The first one we got 7,000 for. Yeah,
Let's
And-
get two of those.
and then the second one just sold for 3,000. So we did well on those. The truck is well on its way. You guys see the pictures. So we're slated to go back, I think, around the 1st of March for a mid inspection. Take a small team back for that, to go back for a couple days and look it over before they put the aerial on it. Still slated to be done, in April. So, I would expect it, or May, into May.
It could be done before the remodel is.
Yeah, yeah, so
Sorry.
the middle of May is when it's
True.
supposed to be done, hoping to have it here, by,
Only an extra.
so. The squad looks good. It should be done in about a month. Me and Eli went up a week ago and did kind of a pre on it, but they're well underway, tanks in it, pumps in it. And it's gonna be really great too.
And on the squad, I appreciate the fact that we found somebody that would build one acceptable that wasn't Pierce.
Yes.
Save us $890,000.
Yeah.
That's a good find.
And the squad is also real similar to our pumpers. We went away from swing doors, so it has roll up doors, same as our pumpers. So, as we start making all this stuff the same, that's just one part we have to have versus having a whole bunch of different stuff. So it'll be good. It'll be nice.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update. Grant Press. Next up, 2025 final budget update.
So we presented the preliminary budget in November. The final budget has to be submitted the end of February and adopted by the board. There's some modifications between the two budgets that I wanted to cover with the board. So we have to anticipate property taxes for our fire budget in 6212. We anticipated those and we had a $38,000 difference that we made up for. For fire expenditures, salaries we were a little off by $33,000, so the adjustment was made there. That was for administration, and for suppression salaries, we were off by about $7,500, so an adjustment was made there. Benefits, we had benefits twice, and we had MERP in benefits as well as MERP in salaries, so we just alleviated one of those, making it a 0, and so reducing by $48,000. Maps, books, and periodicals, we increased by $1,000. Radio dispatch, we had to increase by $40,000. There was some minor modifications to tech rescue where their equipment under 5,000 was increased by $1,000 and PPE was increased by 500. So total revised expenditures in 6212 were $35,636. So we were pretty close. For revised revenue and budgeting in 6242 EMS, we were a little off on we overestimated the preliminary property taxes by $10,000 and some change. Again, we made that same change with MERP. We pulled it out of benefits, just included it in salaries. So that was a $28,000 gain. Equipment under 5,000, we increased by $5,000, and machinery and equipment, we increased by $200,000. That includes the purchase of the life packs. So that's why we had to make that increase there. So total revised expenditures for EMS totaled $177,000.
You did a good job guessing. It's hard, You want to always ask for more than you think you're gonna get, but you never want to leave any money on the table. Good job, somebody.
But on the, on 6212, with on page 5, I guess, so just look at, so, just making sure I'm reading this right. So the 2024 budget, we budgeted 20.2 million. On our actual, we actually spent 16.7. So that's why the ending fund balance is 4 million more than we thought it was gonna be. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't have that pulled up.
No,
So
sorry.
just repeat it one more time.
Yeah, page 5 on 6212.
Okay,
When I look at the 2024 budget, we were at 20.2 million. The actual was 16.7. Which moved the ending fund balance from a projected 10.2 is what we thought it was gonna be to 14.1. Right, so we're 4 million more than we thought we were going to be.
Oh, no.
How would we say that then?
I mean, as far as tax revenue, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm looking at 6212 and then the ending fund balance. So the two middle columns there, it's page 5 and 9 on 12A.
And you're looking at 2025?
I'm looking at 2020.
Okay.
So we budgeted 20.2 million to spend expenditures. We spent 16.7. Right, so that moved the ending fund balance from a projected budgeted 10.2 to 14.1. Right. So we're 4 million more than we budgeted for. I assume that's to
That's-
meet the 35%. Or is that, or do we have that set aside somewhere else?
No, some of that is included in the carryover of the year before.
Even that one time. So because the actual from the year before was 13.2.
So
The ending fund balance.
go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just gonna look up what he's looking at. So go ahead, just refine it.
I think it's good. I'm just asking, it looks like we're 4 million more than we budgeted to spend.
Well, maybe the way to explain it is we never spend all of what we budget, you know, we ended up with what, 70-some% expended, or 80%.
Yeah.
And some of it has to do with budgeting for those liabilities that we don't know if we're gonna have to pay them out. When people leave, we have to cash them out, or everybody in the department cashed out for comp time, we have to have that budgeted just in case that happens. So.
But that would be in the budget part, not the actual part. Right, so that's why you're saying, so that we have, we have 4 million in liabilities then on the fire budget?
No,
Or is that part of the 35%?
no, I didn't mean to imply that there's 4 million in those liabilities that we fund. It's just that we don't spend everything we budget every year.
Right.
And we plan high and hopefully come in under that, which we normally do.
Yeah.
That's why I wasn't overly concerned about 2027 showing not being able to carry over the 35%, because generally we're going to make that.
Right.
We went through all this before back in 2008, 9, 10 in that area. And we did have to make some cutbacks, but we didn't lose any personnel. We didn't maybe fill a couple of positions we normally would have, but we got through that okay, just like we'll get through this.
Okay, and I guess that's probably my point, right? Is I get that we're forecasting conservative, which is great. But I guess I did want to point out that we seem
Yeah.
to be doing okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so there is,
Example would be we budget let's say we budget $100,000 for attorneys, hoping one you can spend 10.
Yeah.
Again, there's the.
I'm good with it. I just wanted to. point it out.
I'm getting the chief more concerned.
I was just trying to get what you were
Yeah.
referring to.
And then similar would be under the EMS budget under 64 or 6242. That one's only like $1 million, so, right? We budgeted
Yeah.
to spend 6.8, we spent 5.5. So our carryover went from 3.3 to 5.2.
correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's I make a motion to approve resolution 2025-01 adoption of the 2025 final expression budget.
So that's second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Yeah, I'll do it right.
Okay.
A motion to approve resolution 2025-02, adoption of the 2025 final EMS budget.
I will second that.
All right, motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Once again, I appreciate the breakdown. Nice to do that every year.
You're welcome.
Next up, surplus.
So there's a small list of surplus items that are no longer serviceable or needed. It's helpful if the board lets the chief dispose of those at their discretion.
Make the motion to allow the chief to dispose of the surplus items as listed under discretion.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. We did have one additional agenda, item or new business item, that's a, moving change.
I would ask if the board is okay with moving the March 18th meeting to March 18th with the case shift. Okay.
What's it, Tuesday to Wednesday, correct?
To March 19th to 4 p.m.
My motion's been made to move the March 18th meeting to March 19th. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
So note on the March meeting, I will be out of town, unable to make that. Yeah, President say.
All right, with that, board will be moving into executive session. That'll be in accordance with RCW 42.30.110, parentheses I, parentheses G, to evaluate the performance of a public employee. That executive session should last 15 minutes. Reconvene at 5:00. We met in executive session and took no action. Moving on to roundtable, good of the order.
Without mentioning a name, one of my neighbors, Station 2 ran on, and I should have looked at some shit. They ran on my neighbor. And it's out in pain. I think it was a 3 or 4. It was like 5:30 in the morning, it was time to hear. Anyway, ended up with a perforated ulcer, had to have 2 surgeries, he was in the hospital 29 days. He came home yesterday, they just happened to see him going down the road in the car, and he said he wanted me to take the bags. His wife thinks they saved his life, probably not, but he wanted to make sure that, really appreciate it. Very good. Her name was Steve.
I would say, just driving around town, right, just seeing the members out with the truck company practicing, that's pretty cool, and then, just driving around, seeing BC and engine company out drilling, and I think the public likes that, to see our crews being ready. They look sharp, they look good, and I just encourage, keep it up.
Great work by all.
I also wanted to tell the board that we got notification through other fire service agencies that we had 2 off-duty members, Adam Posguy and Josh Lawson, who were in the right place at the right time. Somebody had a child that had a near drowning, came outside with the child, and they helped resuscitate and start care of the kids. So pretty cool thing. Not hunting, they were in Camas, Washougal for
They
some
were off
reason.
duty, yeah.
Off
at a
duty,
neighbor's
yeah.
house.
Oh, I thought you said hunting, sorry, off duty.
Well, very good.
Yeah, yeah, so the kid has been discharged from the hospital without any deficits.
Very good.
With that, we'll need to authorize February issuance of payroll warrants, Clark County Treasurer. Authorize February payroll direct deposit treasurer's check. Authorize February deposit of federal FICA medical withholding treasurer's check. Authorize pre-authorization invoice transmittal. And authorize payment of current bills.
It's over.
Second.
Right, move and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Good.